But welcome again to Mindful Reality, the channel that covers reality TV from a mental health perspective. It's your boy, M to the A to the R to the C. I am here, and it's Tuesday. You know what else it means? It is Taco Tuesday, and there's a taco place by my house, by my job, not by my house, by my job. God forgive me for saying house and job in the same sentence as if it's the same place. Even though I spend more time at my job than my house, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, there's a taco place, there's a Mexican restaurant next to my job down the block, and they charge $2.50, I think, for tacos on Tuesdays. And I'm gonna get 2 tacos today. I'm gonna get a chicken. I don't know who heard what I said and who didn't hear what I said, but just to briefly repeat this again, I titled this video Conflict Resolution, and I talked about that I grew up in and how communication was just like communicating a conflict. It was not something I was allowed to do. It was like your child, for the adults, know a child's place. My family was big on that. I was not allowed to air any grievances or talk about how I feel about things. It was just, again, like, I don't care about your feelings. I don't care if you felt a way when I did this. I don't care about any of that. You're the child. Stay in the child's place. That was pretty much it. So now here I am getting into an adult spot. Oh, you heard me before? Yeah. So now here I am as an adult, like actually kind of teaching myself how to sit in a conflict and resolve it, because the upbringing that I had didn't allow space for that. So for me, I developed this avoidance, and I'm not talking in psychological terms. This is just my own self-assessment. I developed it for me, and then I was gonna say, yeah. And then if it was somebody who I considered as an insignificant person in my life, like I don't have to continue to talk to them, and there's nothing that is making me have to continue my interaction with them, then I just completely just cut them off and ghost them. Before ghosting was a term, I did that to people a lot. I was ghosted once before, so I'm not immune. I was ghosted by somebody that I was actually dating at that time. So I have been ghosted before. But just ghosting people in a general sense, I did it to a lot of people. And now, at my big old age, which some would say is a young age, but it's old enough, 38, I've started to learn to sit with uncomfortable feelings, generate solutions. And I have found that the majority of the time, sitting in those uncomfortable scenarios has provided a solution, and that the solutions are usually not attained because most people are not willing to do that. Simply put, I had a few conflicts at work. I've had many conflicts at work. Forget a few. I'm just saying I've had a few conflicts at my most recent job. I've had many conflicts at many jobs, as y'all know, even from the 3-4 years that some of you have been following me just on this channel or the last one. But at this job, comparatively to other ones, there's been way less HR usage, because I started to go to HR at a point. I was like, HR. And I have gone to HR for this one once, but that was not because of me not being able to handle the conflict. It was because of things that were said to me being so out of pocket that I deemed that person needing to get some kind of a punishment. But anyways, this place, more than anywhere that I've ever been, I've made efforts that when things happen that I don't like, when things are said or done that I don't like, to actually ask a person, can I sit down and speak with you? And then, talk through whatever the thing is and see what they have to say. And almost every time I've done that, I've discovered that we're just not on the same page. You're on one page of this book, I'm on this other page of this book, and that's what it is. But in where I approach that discussion and we end the discussion where we began, because they're gonna have their stance, they're gonna have their side of the story, they're gonna have their reason behind it, and sometimes we will, because of not wanting to have that conversation, will make up something in our head, and then the longer that we go without addressing it and speaking about it, it becomes a mountain on either end. Your mountain and my mountain, we each have a mountain of a story. The mountain out of a molehill, we each have that story that we have generated in our head, and it grows and it grows and it grows the longer that we go without having a direct conversation where the two of us address the situation. And that's happened a couple of times, and I'm learning that I am capable. I always say that I am not capable of having that type of conversation when I'm angry. That's true, right? But when I'm in the midst of being angry, but I consider angry as for me, when I'm angry, it means that I have lost control in a sense. I can't express myself properly. But a tool that I have learned for me is that when I get to that point, a tool that I learned from a therapist that gave me this tool. The therapist basically told me, when your meter is at that point. So when your meter gets to that point of no return, exit the situation in any way that you can. In some cases, if I was having a phone call, it could just mean, hey, I'm not in a good position to talk right now? Can we continue this conversation a little bit later? Exiting. If you happen to be like in an office, hey, I just need to take a little walk. I need to get some air. Maybe it's just 10 minutes that you can scenario, but just find your way to temporarily separate yourself. But the thing that I'm learning how to do in those cases is not just to separate myself, but to also express to the other party the boundary, because it actually is a boundary. Because I remember I tried to do that with my dad sometimes, and he was just going in on me, and I'm just like, I need a little break from this conversation. I didn't say it like that, but I would just physically just get up and move, and he would be furious about that. Like, how dare you how dare you walk away while I'm talking to you, type of thing. And the walking away was because the things I was thinking to say would have been worse than me walking away. But you can tell somebody, you can actually actively tell somebody, hey, you know what, right now I don't think this conversation is serving either of us, and I'm not dismissing it. I would like to see this to its resolution, but right now I would like to pause on the conversation, take a little break, and can we revisit it when I can clear my head and think a little bit better? And obviously that doesn't work for everyone, because some people are like, this has to be concluded right now type of people, but I'm such a better communicator when I can cool off just a little bit. I'll give you an example. I remember this one year, my boss was so terrible that it felt like 90% of what I was talking about in my therapy was her. And it was a remote job, so people couldn't understand how somebody who doesn't even see me in person could impact me like this. So the therapist said to me, one thing that you should never do is respond to your boss when you're angry. And then the therapist was like, you have the advantage that your communications are like Zoom and Teams and stuff like that, and phone. So you're never actually sitting there in person where you can't go. You can't leave. She said, even if you are in a meeting with said boss, you can still go. And I said, how is that? Because we're in a meeting. She said, do you ever use the bathroom? I said, yeah. She said, how is she going to know whether you're using the bathroom or not? Does she check? I said, no. So she said, you're getting in the middle of something, you tell that boss, can you excuse me for 5 minutes? Nature calls. And I was like, at first I was kind of like, that's kind of a crazy thing to say to my boss. But then I was also like, nature does call, and I am home. So if necessary, I wouldn't do that every day, every week or anything. But if I had to pull that out of my back pocket, I would. She was like, this one time I remember talking about a time, I said, my boss just makes me so furious. She was like, you know what? Next time when you have something to say, and you feel it strongly in your heart, right? Go outside, put on some music that you like, scream if you have to, phone a friend, anything that makes you feel better. When you're at a 10 out of 10, do that, and then come back and revisit the situation. And if you still feel the same way that you felt when you left, do whatever you want. Have at it. Curse that boss out. Say what you want to say. Say what's on your mind. So then I remember, shortly after that, because my boss always presented me with scenarios where I could test out these different things, right? And sometime shortly after that, are you going to drive or are you going to just, I don't know what you're doing. Anyways. Yeah, so I had she didn't give me any shortage of opportunities to test out these theories. So one time she got me real furious. And I took the advice of that therapist. And I went outside, I put my music on, I took a walk around the block. I took 2 walks around the block, which was probably about a quarter mile, something like that. And then I got back inside. The first lap, let me tell you, I was cursing her out in my head for the whole first lap. The second lap comes around, and I'm like still kind of cursing her out, but it's a little bit less. I think I took a third lap. And then I was like, So I got back to my house. My anger towards this boss went from a 10 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10. So you might have been thinking that I'm going to tell you that 10, 15 minutes that I walked around outside took away all the anger. It didn't take away all the anger, but what it did was it took away enough of the anger that I wasn't going to say something to make me lose my cool or lose my job. And that was the only goal of the whole coping mechanism. So, because I can think like a 7 out of 10, like a 7 out of 10, anger. For me to be at a 10 out of 10, for me, that means that I have no control over what I'm saying or how I'm feeling. I lose the ability to adequately express myself. And it takes a lot to get me there. Because I'm so poised of a person. Like, poised to the point of it irritates people. It irritates people who try to get me out of my comfort zone. I'll tell y'all something. One thing that somebody doesn't like, my dad was this type of person. When he's angry, he's angrier. He's even angrier when he's angry and you're not. And so there's people like that in this world that are like, if I'm angry, we all gotta be angry. If I'm in a bad mood, we all are gonna be in a bad mood together. And I've become over the years such a person that doesn't allow myself too much to feed into other people's energy. Sometimes I do. I'm not going to say I never do that, but it takes a lot for me to let people see if I'm feeding into their energy. First of all, you're not going to know unless you just know me or unless I'm comfortable enough to actually just straight up tell you, like, this person gets under my skin. I don't like to let people know that they've gotten under my skin, even though sometimes, occasionally, they do end up knowing or seeing that, but most of the time, no. But anyways, good morning, Ed. I've reached my destination, unfortunately, and therefore I have to do something that resembles work for the next 7 to 8 hours. So thanks for joining me this morning on my morning commute. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. What up?